welcome back to another episode of Decentralized Chain. It's Feroz, and in today's episode we are going to be covering Saito. But before we do, and if this is the first time you're here and you want to learn more about crypto, whether it's news, insights or analysis to help you get that edge, then start now by hitting the subscribe button below and the bell notification icon so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. Now, on the topic of Saito, really to kind of provide a brief description over it, Saito is really looking to create the scalable network layer that's needed in order for dApps to communicate with the underlying blockchains. Now, if we try to provide a bit of context around that, take Ethereum today, for example. If an Ethereum developer wants to create a dApp and communicate with the Ethereum network, they either have to be running a full node or they need to go through INFURA, which is owned by Consensus Developer Studios. Now, the issue here is that INFURA, being the open point for fundamentally these dApps to be able to communicate to the Ethereum network, it's underpinned by centralized services like your Amazon Web Services, like your Google Cloud Services. And that really becomes a fundamental problem, because if INFURA is to go down, which it has done in the past, then that means every dApp trying to connect to the Ethereum blockchain through INFURA is going to stop working. And that poses a problem because we're living in a decentralized ecosystem, whereas the decentralized applications that we're creating still fundamentally rely on centralized services in order to be decentralized. And I think there is scope here really for a player like Saito to be able to really address that problem, and that's what they're doing here. That's the whole point. They're looking to become that scalable network layer, and not just for the Polkadot ecosystem, but cross-chain. And if we kind of have a look at some of the price action around it, their IDO launched about 3 weeks ago, a little over 3 weeks ago, and fine, the price action hasn't been the greatest. But when I actually take a step back and have a look at where the market cap is, which is, sitting at 18.7 million, that's nothing in all honesty. When you kind of have a look at what I would say the competitors in this space, and, the one that comes to mind really is Near Protocol, not exactly a direct competitor, but they're sort of trying to address that in a roundabout way. They're sitting at a $2.1 billion market cap. That's more than 100x from where Saito is today. And Near is also looking to, provide scalability for decentralized applications, kind of speed up that whole entire process. So there really is an opportunity here. And I think this is one super undervalued project that once we see the likes of the Polkadot ecosystem taking full flight, these are the type of network infrastructure solutions that we're actually going to need to be able to remove away from those centralized services, to reduce the cost burden that's there, and fundamentally move away from really having that small select of few permissioned open points to access underlying blockchains to decentralized, truly decentralized applications running on their own. And to kind of stay up to date with this, I'm going to start looking at creating a monthly series on tracking Saito, because I think it's always good. There's lots of projects that I review, and I think going forward, I'd like to also then catch up with these teams again to see where we're heading, just to kind of see if milestones are truly being hit. And so we're going to jump into an interview with the founder, Richard Parris, or co-founder, should I say, Richard Parris, to kind of really understand a bit more in terms of where Saito is heading now. So stay tuned for the monthly update, and I'll see you on the other side. Richard, welcome back to the show. Great to have you here, man. How you doing?
Great to be back. Really well, thanks.
Excellent. Well, look, I thought it'd be good for us to catch up. It's been a little over, well, actually, I would say a little over a month, but actually, your IDO was only under a month ago, right?
Yes, yeah. April 22nd.
That's so right, yeah.
3 weeks, yeah.
Right, well, look, I think it's a great opportunity to understand what's next, because, always leading up to the IDO, there's always a lot of hype and there's a lot of buzz. But I thought, let's kind of get down to basics and see what are the next steps for Saito. Where do we go from here?
I think there's a couple of big changes for the reality of the project. Mm-hmm. Which come from basically having raised a decent round and then gone through the IDO process and really, bolstered our community beyond what we could have imagined without going through that. So I think that leaves us to do a few things and along the IDO process as well. So a lot of team building, a lot of sort of setting out clearly the roadmap for the kind of technical development, community building, all of that sort of stuff, and just getting our communications to match the expectations of that new community. And that's a sort of a thing we'll be working on ongoing. And then there's also, the new responsibilities you have with a trading token around, looking to ensure things like, there's a good path to exchange listings. People are aware of treasury rules and those sorts of things, so that everything's clearly communicated and everyone's understanding what's happening.
So, I mean, for roadmap wise, what we got coming up then?
So I mean, on the technical front, we've hit the ground running. We've always been builders, and the community involvement and the funding has just given us the ability to start really executing on those key things we've been talking about. That's been launching the Rust implementation of the protocol as a kind of data center, moving toward a data center ready Saito node that people can run. And to me, the triumph there is that Clay, our kind of head of development, the director of engineering, I think is his official title, was complaining to me the other day that he's already no longer writing any code. People have come in and started a community's commits around that project, and that's fantastic. If he's already dealing with an influx of commits and input from community, I mean, that's exactly what we want. So that's huge on that front. The other side is we've had space to loop back round, and we talked a lot about the Web3 grant in the IDO period. So we've got some exciting announcements and updates to the Saito.io platform that are embedding some of that work we've done on that. So expect announcements shortly in our channels. And that's, I think, going to blow people away. So we're really excited about those things technically.
Yeah. And, I mean, how have you found the community? Because now that, you are sort of on the markets trading, we're not really talking about price here, but that does bring a lot more focus and attention to the token itself. And, with that, I think you get I like to think that you get an influx of community that come in as well, because they kind of start seeing that you're performing, that you're building, that price is appreciating, and it all sort of falls into a snowball effect. So I suppose to that point, how's community engagement going to be going forward from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. I think there's kind of a couple of sides to it. With the people who've been in the community for any length of time, we've had a really positive response from them, and we've made a big effort to be available. We've sort of set up things like office hours. So my time, Monday evenings, I'm around for a couple of hours, and people can just drop in and chat and ask questions. We've done community AMAs and that sort of thing. And I think, we are who we are, and people are appreciating the dedication and commitment there. At the same time, I've learned a fair bit personally about not just being open, etc., but actually thinking through the perspective of the people who are coming in and joining the community, how to engage them, and also let them know status, etc. I mean, the wonderful thing about that dedicated community I was talking about is they'll help a great deal with that. But just making sure people are aware of what we're doing, reaching out and giving people clear indication of roadmap, etc. Because you're absolutely right. The price on the token and having achieved certain very visible known milestones, launching, etc., gets you attention and gets people excited about what you're doing. But the objective isn't to just sort of get them excited and then move on to the next person. It's to build a real community, and that takes particular types of communication that I think we're learning about and getting better at.
And so, in terms of growth for your community, though, I suppose what can they start sort of looking forward to next?
I mean, we've got some cool things coming up with, classic community engagement that I think people will find, fun and stuff. And we like to have fun in the community, obviously. We're working hard to some kind of, standard hallmark things, like we are working hard on exchange listings and those sorts of things. And that's a real challenge, partially at the moment, because exchanges are rather busy listing every animal coin they can find now. So that's kind of challenging us in terms of getting attention. And at the same time, like some of the bigger exchanges, if you approach them, they really do ask exorbitant things that in the end are worse for our community and worse for the project than not listing with them. So we're navigating a good path through there. And I think some of the most exciting stuff though for community is coming back to Saito.io, the arcade and the platform. And I think that's really a big space to watch, because that kind of took a little bit of a back seat during the IDO and the launch, people getting excited about token, etc. But that existed before the IDO. It had a good user base before, and now with extra resources and that extra community, I think it's really going to be exploding. And there'll be a lot of things to get involved with in terms of the evolution of that platform, enjoying just using that platform and seeing it spread out into sort of more and more of the ecosystem. So I think there's quite a bit coming. And the arcade is a place to be, and just generally in our community channels, I think you'll see a lot happen.
It's interesting you mentioned the arcade, because you're right. There's always two bits, because you've got the natural community that sits within inside Telegram, and that's quite vibrant and buzzing and everyone's sort of engaging. And then also you've got the arcade element there, where they can have a bit of fun really more than anything else and take part in with all the various apps or dApps you want to call them that are sort of already running on there, which is good fun. Now you mentioned Web3 earlier, Bill. I'd love to talk a bit more about exactly how sort of the items are planning out for the Web3 side of things, because initially that's kind of where it all pivoted from, right?
Right. That was I think last time around we mentioned that was kind of a pivotal moment getting the Web3 grant and being pushed a little bit more into limelight because of that. And we have been, conscientiously working away on that in the background ever since. We've taken various aspects of what we've built to the community for testing and review, and I think, we're really happy with where it's gotten to. And we have basically what we're going to do is a bit of a launch around how that fits into our stack to test it, and then submit our first milestone with the Web3 Foundation, and get their kind of feedback and review before that moves on to the next milestones. I think as well as that, another thing we've gotten out of the engagement with the Web3 Foundation and also with the Ethereum community and the way we've launched the token that we're using, etc., is some more connections and some real impetus to spread beyond the Polkadot part of the Web3 ecosystem to, Solana, to the BSC ecosystem, etc. Because I think there's confidence in the team now, and also a much better understanding of where the ecosystem's at. We'd spent maybe a little too long building and without focus on what we're doing ourselves, and people were surprised. For instance, we hadn't used. Some of the founders hadn't used Uniswap. I'm one of them prior to the IDO, because we'd been building. We kind of missed some of it because concentrating, doing what we do, and you don't feel like I should keep up with that crypto thing when you're building a significant part of
course.
So I think that's really a big next exciting step for us, is particularly with this larger community behind us, etc., is having the wherewithal and the ability to reach out and say, how can we provide into these other ecosystems the same promise and execution that we are in the Web3 Foundation space and the Polkadot space, because the fundamentals remain the same across all of those ecosystems.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that point, because I see a lot of projects, looking at the whole interoperability space and also branching out onto projects like Solana, Ethereum, being able to cross or bridge the chain between those as well. And interestingly enough, you also end up, there's a couple of other projects that I've worked with in the past, and funny enough, those ecosystems themselves, whilst you have the project community, there's also the community around those ecosystems as well, which are actually a slightly different type of individual, that are either very geared towards BSC ecosystems, or they're very geared towards Solana. So it's interesting to say that. So I'd love to see how that all pans out as you branch out into those ecosystems as well.
Yeah, and there's two really cool things there. One is that interconnection aspect that you mentioned, of being able to help with having things move seamlessly between these ecosystems, and being a big part of that, being able to bridge those. And the other thing is that, we're just seeing it, some of the big Saito talking points are being lived out every day by anyone in DeFi at the moment who's trying to do anything on the Ethereum ecosystem, where the funding and the way gas, etc., works doesn't support the creation of sufficient infrastructure to allow for reasonable user experiences, and that's being a victim of its own success. ETH has plans to move ahead, and groups like NEAR, I think, in some ways have raced them to that point. But even still, they haven't addressed these fundamental things around funding infrastructure that Saito deals with, and will at some point, meet with the same, gas fee turmoil that we have now, if they're successful enough. And we're all, everyone in this space is confident that's going to happen. We all know we're only at the beginning in terms of general adoption around things like DeFi, etc. And so, that's really exciting for us to be able to be there, get in front of these groups early and say, look, we have solutions to these key things that really are difficult to address if you can't change the way blockchains actually work.
No, and I think it's because we're literally having this conversation only I would say 3.5 weeks after your IDO. So I would still say we are super early in terms of what we have in store for Saito and what we can look forward to coming up. And to that point, the reason where we're having this show today is really to start, having more of an engagement and more of a monthly update, so to speak, which would be really cool for us to carry on doing, and to give back to the community as well, so they can. Everyone always loves to read a Medium page, but sometimes some people just like to see the face behind the project as well.
Right. I'm excited about it for a couple of reasons. One is, all the stuff I said before, we really mean it. We are looking for the best ways to engage with and help people understand what Saito's doing and get the most out of being part of the community. And also, just regular catch-ups are a great way to make sure that, we're actually capturing what's going on, that people are seeing that, and that we don't kind of fall back into that thing where you're just sort of always looking at the everyday. It's really good to come back and say, look, this last month, this is what's happened. There are, you're right to be excited about Saito. Look what we're achieving. This is how you can be part of it, and this is where we're going. And so, I'm really looking forward to having that opportunity to do that on a regular basis. Yeah,
no, because I think one of the key things that I notice within the overall crypto community, and it's with other projects as well, is sometimes it almost feels like that it's a checkbox exercise just to get a Medium article out to say what your monthly update is, and that's all well and good, but from a communication perspective, there are different types of appetites that we kind of need to feed when it comes to updates, and and I see it myself in my own personal working life, where I can be so head down in a project that sometimes you almost forget to kind of rise above it and say, look, this is what's going on. There's lots of stuff happening. I might not have said anything yet, but there's progress. We're busy building or working away. There's milestones that we're achieving, and having that type of platform to be able to talk out openly about that and visually really does help.
Absolutely, and I think also this conversational style, like you were saying before, sort of, whether it's a densely written Medium piece or a really light set of bullet points, it conveys information in one way. Sitting down and talking about it, I think, is a really valuable addition to that, to get a sense of how the mood and the experience of being part of the community.
Exactly. Well, look, Richard, I think we're going to wrap this up because we're going to try and keep these sort of short, concise update sessions. But any parting words for our viewers?
Mostly, I mean, the exciting thing for this week is keep your eye open for announcements around the Web3 grant proposal work we've been doing. There's some really cool stuff coming your way.
There you go. Stay tuned, folks. Well, Richard, I'll catch up with you in a month to see how you guys are progressing on.